And we're live on the Metal Lab. A couple minutes late. Sorry, guys. Tom was had to get in a little late, and we waited on him because it's me and Tom.
Yep.
So you get the wacky minds of the Metal Lab today. That said, the Metal Lab, of course, being brought to you by hcrealms.com. And if you want to support us and support HC Realms, go to realmsgaming.com and you can do a little bit of shopping through HC Realms. They have some wonderful stuff for Heroclix accessories. I've seen the TCG player bag now up close and personal from a friend of mine, and it is a wonderful looking bag. It's actually nice material and it looks very sturdy. There's also dice cups, hats, and paper maps that you can get that are actually versions of older ROC maps that were prizes in past events. So check that out again at realmsgaming.com and use the coupon code MARRIED to get yourself 10% off of your purchase. All right. As well, don't forget, if you want to support us directly, check us out at patreon.com/marriedwithclicks and become a patron. We have all kinds of perks for our patrons, and some of that includes getting to decide what I do on Metafix, building mine and Amber's teams, or joining us on this show for the low price of $50 a month. Or if you just pay for 1 month, you can come on the show for one episode if you so desire. So, that said, it's been a week, Tom. How you been this week?
I've been great. I haven't been very Heroclixy. Suddenly life took over as it does with a lot of work and a lot of auditions for the company that I direct and music direct for. But it's been a great week. I've enjoyed watching the results come pouring in. Between a combination of the Realms catching up some of the tournaments that hadn't had their postings put in place and actual more recent tournaments, it feels like an unbelievably alive time in terms of the higher tournament setting of Heroclix right now. It is amazing how many results are coming in with every team wildly more different than the one that came before. It's amazing how much is out there right now. So it's cool to watch it from afar while I'm behind a spreadsheet or an audition table.
Yeah, and I do appreciate that wide open segue you just left me on when we're talking about awesome teams that are showing up. So as they're picking up the pace and starting to catch up with tournaments as they've just recently done this week, one tournament in Raleigh, North Carolina caught my eye, specifically in the top 8 of this tournament. I'm going to screen share the team just so that we get a good look at the guy who also piloted it. So Hugh Vogt, I hope I'm saying his right, senior, built this interesting shield theme team. It's got the Fast Forces Sky, the super rare Nick Fury, Alexander Pierce, the Shield Bodyguard, the one has on a second click, has 18 defense, and Fitz from the main set. This comes in at 300 points. Now, Tom, when I went over this team, what did I fail to mention, and what is not on this team?
Well, I was waiting for you to go on, to be perfectly honest, because I wasn't keeping track of points in my head while you were just rhyming it off. So then there was kind of a pause in the conversation where I waited for you to say, and Parallax is on Nick Fury, and there's a green power battery, and there's a sin being brought in through some effect that I've never heard of before, and they're all using this ATA, and etc. So yeah, all of the above is missing. It feels like he just bought a couple of boosters, decided to call it a sealed game for a competitive game, and then came in 8th place, at which point he is the ultimate hero of heroes. He's already the ultimate hero of heroes, showing up with this shield team with none of the above.
Absolutely. Now, I wanted to share this for a reason. You and me, we did discuss that we wanted to talk about the greater meta, but this has some implication as far as the direction the meta is going when it comes down to it. For one, now it is notable that it's a shield team, which means that there are stat bonuses coming from this team if used correctly and in certain ways. As well, there's a large number of figures on the team, and of course we've got the shield bodyguard upping some defenses on a second click. So we could be seeing the return of the bubble. And I welcome the bubble because I also like to play Energy Explosion.
It's true. That team trades on an awful lot of free actions. One wonders whether he just never ran afoul of a green battery or just got some really lucky matches, because that is one of the things you always these days I'm always afraid to do anything that relies so heavily on Alexander Pierce using Perplex and Sky using Perplex and Fitz. Does he have that 35-point Fitz? I can't remember where he is.
That's the one that brings out the hoverbots.
Okay, cool. So you've got that. Obviously, Nick Fury is free actioning to turn off powers. So there's a lot of free actions already, and then you've got, of course, additional bumps. You've got the shield team ability to extend out Nick Fury's range, and potentially to bump up his damage as well. And so all of those stats mods. I guess the other thing is no Nightwing primes. Your Nightwing primes shut down the enormous amount of modification that's happening, and your green batteries would shut down a lot of free action abuse. So I guess in a lot of those cases, those guys are only taking one free action anyway, so a lot of those perplexes would get through as long as there's not a Nighthawk looking at it. But it's still amazing that it managed to do so well without any additional support at all, which is super exciting. And I often wonder whether we need the entities and resources as much as we all perceive that we do. It's very hard to argue against it when demonstrably they are out there in such quantity, and they provide such a disproportionately greater boost than their points would indicate under most circumstances. But it's nice to see a bold soul who's willing to go through trying something like this and making it work to such great effect. That's really cool. There's only one attacker on that team.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're free of a Nightcrawler Prime, you can have more attackers, because I'm thinking to myself, oh wait, this, for some reason I thought this was main sets, guys, so I'm just going to go completely away from the topic of conversation I thought I was going to have for a second.
All right.
He does have a lot of tools in order to keep his Nick Fury alive. Alexander Pierce, I believe, has some kind of no you damage me instead ability. Fitz is there with the hoverbots to do some, harassment, if you will. And to add, of course, to the safety level of the rest of the team, because the hoverbots allow you to act like Fitz is where they are for adjacency purposes. Mm-hmm. So he's there to shield at a safe distance. Plus Sky and Fitz add to some, what's the word I'm looking for? Prob. So between Nick Fury's prob, theme probs, and the ability to use prob from their trait, you got a lot of probability control. So there's a lot of probability of you hitting, even with the small characters.
Yeah.
So, and of course, that shield bodyguard in the late dial can turn to a healer to keep Nick Fury alive even further. So it seemed like at first glance, it looks like he banks on Nick Fury doing a lot, but the team has still got a lot of potential, even if you do happen to find a way to lose Nick Fury. And by that, I mean lose map roll.
Yeah, well, and that's just it. But obviously, Alexander Pierce is there, allowing Nick Fury to mastermind off onto him, even when he doesn't have line of fire, which is super exciting and super effective, providing that there's no precision strike against it. Again, it is one of those things where you just wonder how it went down. Did he get the shape change when he needed it, when there was precision strike across the table? Was he able to strike first? Was he able to use Nick Fury to shut off the precision strike, or Fitz or whatever to take it away so they couldn't use it? It's fascinating, because it seems like when you look at that team, you could just immediately, it comes to mind a series of ways to counter build it. But that's the meta that we're in right now. Every team, not only does every team have a counter, we've always said that every team has a counter. It's not a new idea, but it seems like every team has a counter that you can come up with really quickly now. I guess that's the difference. You don't have to work quite as hard as once you did to find the really specific counters. It feels like no matter what team you put in front of somebody, they can quickly say, oh, it loses to this. That paper, rock, scissors thing has become so ubiquitous that in a way, it almost these days, you really have to throw yourself into, you have to recognize you can only build so far as preparation goes, and then put yourself in the hands of Lady Luck, and ideally, as much as you can, Lady Skill of deployment from that point on.
Yeah, because sometimes even having the team that has the better matchup, or on paper does better, sometimes that player has the tenacity and the positional knowledge and the right map in order to get around all the problems that you've created for that player. And they just tenaciously get their way through it. Jordan, I'm looking at you. I'm sorry, man. That game just comes up so often for us. As well, sometimes you bring that team that's incredibly hard to kill, but there's that one chance that it can die. And this would be my first round at Nationals, where my opponent was playing Resurrection Man and Absorbing Man. And first shot, I hit the Absorbing Man for 6, and he rolled a 6.
Yeah.
That happens, right?
Yeah, it's still a game of dice rolling, no matter what you do. I mean, everyone will go and argue lamp until the cows come home. But I really, these days, I can't remember the last time I've even seen a team that has done well on passive damage almost alone. And it's easier than ever now with red batteries and Star Sapphire batteries out there, giving an easy source of damage under a lot of circumstances. And it isn't. We're not seeing people come forward with here's a team that doesn't need dice. We have seen with the Quinjet, here's a team where none of my actual figures are doing the heavy lifting. ID cards have opened that door up in a weird way. So a lot of times your sideboard is actually now doing the damage for you instead of the characters that you bring with you, which is an interesting and fascinating strategy. But there's still dice rolling happening.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So now we've gone at length about this team. I do also want to throw out a congratulations to the person who got first. Can't take away from him. And this would be Preston Miles, who played Captain Marvel with Amphibian, Scarlet Witch with Entity, and a Despotellis with Adara, and a Green Battery. I actually played against something very similar to this at the Provincials in Toronto at 401 Games. Player Emmanuel played something very similar to this, and he actually had Dupe on his team in place of, I believe, the Scarlet Witch. And it actually came down to him getting very greedy and using Flurry instead of keeping charge, where I was able to use Outwit and what's the word I'm looking for now? Impact Beam to finish off Dupe. Because when people say, how do you deal with Dupe, I say Impact Beam.
An insane resource for damage output.
Yeah, absolutely. So congratulations, Preston, and Hubot Sr., congratulations on your top 8 finish with no resources and no entities. And of course, I'm guessing your son, Hubot Jr., who came with you and also placed in the top 16.
Yeah.
All the players there did an awesome job, and congrats to that. I don't want to take away from anybody, but I do want to continue the conversation in the right direction. And that direction is the state of the meta. That's the thing we wanted to talk about. So we discussed many months back that the cuts to modern were not gigantic, and that meant that what I had said was come September, or stop September, May, we're going to be looking at quite possibly the biggest set of modern meta we've ever seen. And Tom, just before the show, you started telling me that you're starting to see what I meant.
Well, yeah, initially, because your comment was that you thought it was too big, and I was thinking, how practically speaking, can it be too big? I mean, how can there be too much variety? That's like saying that you go to the ice cream store and there's too many flavors of ice cream. I mean, is that really possible? I mean, notwithstanding getting technical and saying like they don't have the electricity to keep the coolers going and stuff like it. So don't be cute. How can there be too many flavors of ice cream?
I won't argue semantics with you. It's okay.
Okay. So and then that is my thought, but we're not talking about ice cream, of course, because my analogy would break down if I try to keep it going, and so I'll just leave it behind. And suffice to say, I'm not sure there are too many flavors of ice cream. I think in that case, that probably is true. That even though I will pretty much always get chocolate chip cookie dough, it doesn't matter how many others there are, as long as there's chocolate chip cookie. I'll leave this. But in
making me hungry.
response to the idea of there being too much in the meta, it actually goes back to what I said a little bit earlier here, which was not only does everything have a counter now, but everything seems to have a counter that you can just think of like that. And that to me is where it starts to break down a little bit. It's hard to feel, I find anyway, and maybe it's just me. So I mean, tell me if you don't feel the same way, or if anybody listening wants to comment and say I don't feel this way, then by all means that's fine. Personally, I feel that I have a hard time feeling confident in just about any construction now, because it's so easy for me to know so many different things that not only can counter build what I've come up with, but are present enough and have been present enough in enough tournaments that I reasonably expect you might see it. A few individual figures pop out of the enormous number that this applies to, or game effects, things like the Green Battery, the Orange Battery, Nick Fury, Nighthawk, Copycat, Highfather. These are a very short list from a very long list of just effects that I always consider, and usually even from that short list, you can always pretty much come up with something. You think, does All right, I've put together a team, but am I overly reliant on my primary attacker, who is my highest point guy? In which case, what am I going to do against Highfather? And so I have to think about that. And then I think, well, if that isn't a problem, then am I conversely relying too much on somebody that could get copycat stolen? And do I have access to a ready capacity to give copycat regen really quickly to get my guy back? And if not, what am I going to do against that? Am I relying too much on stat mods? In which case, what about Nighthawk Prime? Is there a single power that your team hinges on? Nick Fury just feels like too much. I guess the thing that kills me about the introduction of Nick Fury isn't Nick Fury himself. I think that he's an incredibly powerful piece, but he's also a very heavy investment for 6 clicks that of comparatively soft defense. And you often have to do a lot of work to ensure his safety. In the team we were just looking at is a good example of that just about the entire team is built to support him. Even though he's a 120-point character, on that team, that's an extreme tentpole team. That's my own personal definition of a one-man army isn't actually one piece is your team. It's one piece is doing all of the damage dealing on your team. That's normally how I would describe a one-man army. That team that we were just looking at was almost a one-man army with a 120-point figure. And so, you've got to do that kind of work to get Nick Fury propped up. What I don't like is the fact that at this point, you've got a level 7 ID card for 5 points. Anybody can now turn off a power. And it's not like a wit that takes it away, and it's not like the orange battery where you have to have it to remove it from your opponent or whatever. It gets around everything, and it completely shuts it down. And for 5 points, being able to see through just about everything and with extreme range, it just feels like too much. It completely invalidates certain strategies. I mean, I've long been a champion of Jason of Sparta. It comes to mind as a piece that I quite like, and he's completely.
We seem to be having some internet issue. Hoping that we haven't lost Tom completely on this, or myself even. I'm just going to keep going here. And to continue on what Tom is, yeah. So we have the ID cards that can. Okay.
With me?
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not sure if that's my internet or your internet. I got a black screen.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay, I got your picture again. It's a little pixelated.
You sound kind of like a robot, like in Daft Punk. It's cool.
Yeah, it's robot voicing. I've heard of this before. We're having some internet issues, folks. I apologize. We do live in Canada, and I think it's enough of an excuse. So we are fighting with our internet right now. We're gonna check to see if anything is. Are you hearing what I'm saying, Tom? Or okay, Tom is kind of cutting in and out on my end. I'm not 100% sure, so I am going to check to see what's going on here. Yeah, we are fighting with the internet right now. All right, fantastic.
We do live in Canada.
All right, so while I'm hoping Tom's internet kind of speeds up, where he was going with this is yes, the Nick Fury. The ability to bring in Nick Fury for a single turn is very potent, and hey, okay. So I just double checked the stream based on what I was seeing on YouTube. It was your end that was chopping out. So I think we got as far as you started talking about 5 points to bring in and stop a power, and you can carry on from there if you're still back. No, it doesn't sound like we got you back. The technical difficulties are real. This is the challenge of a live show. Oh man, it's hard to vamp when you're solo. This is the big risk you take when you get one-on-one talk on this particular show. So I apologize, ladies and gentlemen, for this. Yeah.
Well, as I wait patiently and assume that I'm the one who's being casted.
Okay. We have your voice back.
Yeah.
Oh, and we lost you again. Hold on a second. I'm going to turn Tom's. Oh, no, that's my camera. I want to click on this, go here, see if I can mess with Tom from my end. No, apparently not. Ah, man. This is all blowing up in my face right now. So while Tom's internet kind of jumps back into life, maybe I'll have him disconnect and reconnect again. We'll see how that goes. Eject him, and then I will add him again. Meantime, I'm going to just take a second to address one of the fan questions that we have in the comments below. So first we have Jackson Agar. He's asking, hey, I went to a Clicks for a Cure event. I was 5th place at 12 years old. I beat a Superman yellow and almost made the man cry. My question, has Tom ever looked at Shadowlast? Seems like him and is surprisingly annoying with her smoke cloud. Oh, geez, you would ask a question of Tom, but I've lost Tom. I know myself and Amber have actually taken a look at this character, and we've played around with it. It's difficult to see it. The thing about what Shadowlast does versus with her points, when you compare it to the inclusion of the Blacklight rings, say, with the power plant, is that cost value, where what Shadowlast does is great, but what the value you get out of it for the points isn't necessarily the greatest. So yeah, that's kind of what I would say about it. I'm not sure if Tom has taken a chance to take a look at Shadowlast. I do want to congratulate you on your 5th place, beating out the yellow bad. I'm guessing this is, when you say the yellow Superman, this is the either the Superboy Prime, Sinestro Superboy Prime, or the strategy that involves using the Superman from the Trinity War with Parallax and a yellow power battery. It's one of the few one-man army strategies that is actively used out there. I'm sure somebody is working on something with the 6-armed Ultron right now as we speak. It's a very likely occurrence. So we move on. I'm just sorry. I apologize, folks. I'm just trying to get Tom back in here. And re-invite. All right. So we'll move into the Facebook questions in the meantime. And guys, if you're watching, feel free to throw some questions in the comments below. We need to kind of keep the show alive, so I'll have you guys be my second host for a little bit, and throw me some questions on Facebook. Throw me some questions in the YouTube comments below. I will address them while we are dealing with our technical issues. We go here on Facebook. So, and go to my second screen with that. And then we see if we've got Tom back. We do not. Okay. So, Chris Stockhouse asks, hope everyone is well. I ended up going to my month 4 Saturday instead of my ROC regional. Lost in the final round to that stupid 6-armed Ultron chase. I was playing Alkema and 3 drones, one Spidey drone, one of the gold drones I like to call the Kamehameha drone. For those of you who watch Dragon Ball Z, you know what I'm talking about. And one of the 30-point Ultron 14s. Who thought it was a good idea to let a guy with 4 printed damage get to swing 3 times with his damage locked? Outwit. It's your best option against that, really. Had to trade for Quinjet since I lost that final game. I was behind by 1 tournament point. That was the breaks. I'm sorry it went down like that. So my question for this week's Metal Lab is, would playing Falcon Cap let you have 4 ID cards on your sideline? Thanks, mates. So, Chris, I actually pre-screened your question earlier today and asked Amber, because Amber is my WizKids event forum guru, if you will. And she, as a matter of fact, asked this question of the group, and I'm going to see if I can't pull up the results here. Vendors ID cards. Bingo. All right, I'm going to screen share it for everybody to see. So, ladies and gents, if you see this Active Delta user, that's Amber on the WizKids forum. So she is jumping the gun on a lot of things. So in the case of the Adventures ID cards, this is where it fell under. For characters such as Alyosha Craven, Fitz, and Rick Jones, who place characters on the map at the beginning of the game, would you include those characters when determining how many ID cards you have on your force? And then we move into the next page because I believe that's where there. So no, only characters that were included as part of your starting force during force construction that will begin the game on the map count towards the ID card restrictions. So unfortunately, Chris, you had a good idea, and the WizKids rules forum has said no. That's a big no-no. So there's your ruling on that one. You can thank Amber for actually jumping the gun and asking that question ahead of time, because when it comes to wordings like that, she will jump immediately on top of asking that question, which is why we get so many good episodes of Dial It Up, as it were. So next up, as I find my questions back again. Obi-Wan Chris. I just want to say your analysis of Age of Ultron was amazing. Thank you. All the statistics you guys put together were very intriguing. Well, Tom did a lot of work on that as well, and he just kind of got to be the first to say it. And the chemistry and charisma you guys have with one another is just amazing. Sorry to be such a fanboy, but you have a truly entertaining show, and I appreciate all your efforts. Thank you. Well, thank you very much for watching. We appreciate all the support we get from you guys, and we do put on the show for you. And then Obi-Wan Chris, he carries on to ask, one more thing. How do you guys feel about teaming up about 8 Ultron drones with Ragdoll from the Flash set? Turn 1, you can put all of them on their demigod clicked using sidestep, or on any turn you need them to attack. So we are familiar with the power, and we have Tom in the Metal Lab. So, and that means that Tom has actually come across this idea, and we actually described it as the super boosted blind owl method to get things just kind of going on you. It's a very cool idea, and it also introduces a character that you can use to lock down opposing characters. Fortunately, that character can't be carried, or I can't safely be carried, I believe is the word I'm looking for. That said, it's a great idea, and if you think the team that you have can make that work, then I definitely suggest giving it a try. Do be aware that there's a lot of double target energy exploders out there, and make sure that you're not stuck on a toughness click. I know a lot of them have invulnerable or impervious on there. You will want to be careful of multi-targeting psychic blasters or penetrating or precision strikers in a lot of the cases, because a lot of those guys, at 30 points, they all only have 2 clicks. So one energy explosion can really wreck that combination of figures, and you can pull it on. I've found a few ways to pull off psychic blast energy explosions with a little help from the power plant, Mandarin's rings. So keep an eye open for stuff like that, and just be aware that that's a thing that exists, as well as some characters might even have precision strike or energy explosion. So big crowds get very dangerous when it comes to ideas like that. So you got to find an alternative way of protecting them. Maybe drop 30 points to actually add your own power plant to the team, and that way to the stealth, or beyond that, get the barrier from the, what's the one I'm looking for, Ice Blast ring. So you drop one of the Ultrons and you have a full-blown resource that can really help that team motor along. And that's my ideas on that. I might get Tom's on that if we can get him back in the show. Tom had to restart his computer. It's a little slow. And I'm just letting him know right now that I'm addressing fan questions first today. So we move on next. Shane Michael Glendoni. That's I love when we get the Facebook questions and we have your whole names for you. So one of these days I'm actually going to instinctively just go to first and last name that's there and hope that it's right. But Shane Donnie asks, I'm playing a Defend the Bystanders tournament at 300 points. I've got Dead Man for attacking their bystanders for lulls, but I'm at a loss to who to use to defend my own. My Beyonder should be in by Friday for Sky Cycle goodness. Thanks for the suggestion, but I want to wait to play it. So as far as something that's hard and able to defend, you want to look to another character that's hard to kill in the Absorbing Man if you think you can brawl with defending your bystanders, or something that can keep them at bay, or, we go back to what Obi-Wan Chris was talking about, and just bring a bunch of Ultron drones. because they are pretty tough. That means they do have to bring significant damage to the board, and they can bring it. They all start with, of course, 8 movement with sidestep, 10 attack, 3 damage, 17 defense with invulnerable, and then move into awesome clicks on the second click. So if you can find a couple of them that can really, really hold their own, I want to look to the one with Invincible Ultron 14. Amber, you played 2 of them this weekend.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Ultron 14. They're really, really tough buggers, and if your opponent's coming in close, you can throw down with them, especially with some high attack and blades, claws, fangs. So, and as well, like I said, Absorbing Man is a good option as well. Very hard to kill, and he can really throw down in close combat. If you're looking for something more of a turrety type thing, Banshee's a good option. I'll never say no to a Banshee, to be brutally honest. And back him up with Cerise so that he does extreme amounts of damage, and he has a backup attacker to go with it. So those are a couple ideas that I could possibly suggest if you really, really want to win this tournament. It sounds like more of a fun environment, though, so you got to be careful and know that the players you're playing against with it. So if you're using Dead Man for lulz, bring something else that's also equally lulz or obnoxious, like a Ragdoll, who's really incredibly annoying with his Psychic Blast, or with not Psychic Blast, plasticity. And if you try to get away from him, it hurts. So characters with plasticity will really hold people down. That kind of idea. So next up, Julian Hernandez. I really actually kind of wanted Tom on this one for this because I actually saw your question earlier. So I'm working on a 300-point team. I want to know what you thought of the team. Let me know what you would change or take away. You got an Ultron Future drone, Despotellus, Katmatui, an Avenger Sky Cycle, and a green power battery. Now, the unfortunate fact is, of course, since the vehicles can't be armed with a resource, you can't assign anything to the Sky Cycle. So the resource almost becomes a little out of place. As well, that resource that you're using will be a big pain in the butt for the vehicle that you're using. The vehicles, unfortunately, a lot of their activation requires some form of free action. And because the Sky Cycle basically comes with movement and defense, and then needs attack and damage from the character that's in there, it's going to be very difficult if you come across another green battery in order to use that running shot with your pilot, who I'm guessing is going to be the Ultron 8 I saw at the bottom there. Ultron 8, of course, the one with 11 attack, 4 damage, running shot, and Psychic Blast. Now, the reason I say this is because the green battery will block out your ability. Like, the way it works is it takes a free action to copy stats. Then it takes a free action to copy a separate free action, copy a power. And then your running shot, your attack at the end of the running shot is a free action. So basically, what you get stuck with is copying stats in order to use a Sky Cycle, unless you're using a Sky Cycle or you're using Katmatui on the Sky Cycle, because I just learned how to read. And then you're just using it as a transportation method for Katmatui, who can really stand on her own outside of the map. And it's really, I find these small characters with really solid stats are actually your ideal pilots. So I kind of went ahead with my own idea and said Ultron 8 should be piloting, but again, I jumped ahead. As well, you're not going to get the resource bonus to her stats, as she'll be off the board, and you're using printed stats for the vehicle as well. So I don't know, you've heard Tom mention that the reason we want to use the Beyonder in a vehicle is at 100 points, he gets -1 all his stats. But when you use his printed values, which is what vehicles allow you to do, you in fact get the maximum amount of statage that you can out of that Beyonder without the penalty of the -1. So that's another thing worth mentioning is it's great to have the green battery on there, but the green battery is actually not going to get a whole lot of use outside of slowing down your opponent, especially with all the shield, scissor, stop sign, and Green Lantern ring that you're throwing in there. So that's just personally my thoughts. I would personally, I've really wanted to use Guy Gardner as a Green Lantern on a lot of teams, and using the Sky Cycle to move him down the board a lot faster is also an option. Give the Sky Cycle a power action at the end of it, and then move what's his name, Guy Gardner, up next to the target that you want, and he's already got a construct from the beginning of the game attached to him, so he comes in with that. And then, if it's a boxing glove, awesome, +2 attack in close combat with Battle Fury and Precision Strike, because Shape Change and Super Senses are annoying. Or do they have Impervious? well, then don't worry about that. Just bring a pair of scissors, and then there is no rollout that he can get out of there with. So just a thought on an alternative to Kamatui, because the Guy Gardner at his maximum points is 3 more points than the Kamatui. You have 3 items on the power battery. You can do some shifting around on that. And again, I see what you're trying to do, and it's interesting, but unfortunately, you can't get the maximum potential out of what you want when you play against a mirror resource. Just my addendums to it. It's very solid. I see what you're kind of doing, team. And, good luck with further tweaks or even test, because one of the first things is we can give you as much advice on what we would do as possible, but you got to take the build that you have and run it and see for yourself what happens. It actually happened to me recently where I've been talking so much smack about the War Machine in Age of Ultron. And I had to sit down and go, you know what? I gotta put my money where my mouth is. I gotta show people exactly how bad this thing really is, or experience for myself exactly how much smack I've been talking about this thing, and make sure it makes sense. So yeah, that's so test it first, then come back to my advice, and then if you don't like my advice, and depending on how well it does, how poorly it does, adjust based on that. So next up. Steve Langford asks, do you feel a team of nothing but 30-point Ultron drones and ID cards could place high in the top 8 of an ROC? I feel like I've had this conversation, and I do feel like there was a while back, there was a team that consisted, I believe, of 5 Ultron Phalanxes with a few entities and a resource. I don't remember exactly what the resource was. I don't have the location to look it up, but actually, I do believe somebody took it top 4, I believe, with the Phalanx Ultron really pumped up with a bunch of some Phalanxes with some with entities. It was New Jersey. Amber just jumped in. It was New Jersey. Kenny's locals ran that. Tom's still having a little trouble with the internet right now, so I apologize, guys. It's just me yapping at you at the camera. So yeah, it's possible to do well with it. Check out the New Jersey ROC. Again, this guy used a ton of Phalanx Ultrons, so that's the peak maximum you could possibly do damage with, as far as wallet size, in order to do it. But it could be also doable with other Ultrons. This fella just, I'm guessing, happened to have a bunch of Phalanx Ultrons, or borrowed a bunch of Phalanx Ultrons. So Jackson Agar asks that he got a Felix Faust and a Doctor Strange as the prize for his event. Congratulations, Jackson. This is a really good year for young players. A lot of young players are doing really well. They seem to be grasping the game real quick, which is shocking, because I know people in their 30s that just don't get it, or even in their 40s and 50s. They look at me like, how do you fathom these rules? Well, I sit down and look at them, and I pay attention. And this is, I do a lot of work with this, as you can tell with the channel. So next up, Neil Anod. Are the Nick Fury vehicles not fit for the current playstyle? So far, are they underused, and are they unused or underused in ROCs? It's not that they're underused. It's, as I've mentioned before, in the tactics format, because of the existence of the green battery, there is a big fear that can absolutely neuter these vehicles, because so much of what they do is really hinging on taking the free actions. Now, there's a few vehicles that don't rely on that free action, be it for having actual stats or being autopiloted. And that would be, there's 3 vehicles that can kind of exist, and that's Thanos' Throne, Kank's Time Chair, and the Quinjet. Now, the Quinjet exists of its own purposes. It's kind of its own resource. If you check at the Alabama ROC that Easton Brock recently won, we talked about this at length last week, but he used a Quinjet with a small support team, and that small support team keeping his defense incredibly high and your attacks incredibly low, in order to keep a curve of ID cards coming through, and eventually, hit the board with figures that didn't start on the board and just bring the sideboard in. It was a pretty impressive team, and it looks like it's going to be a build that's going to be changed with the ID cards, ideally. Mostly what you see on the board for that team is what you're going to get. And me and Amber are going to be talking about this at length because we've hit our second Patreon goal, and we are going to be starting a show where we break down really high placing teams and explain what about them. Playing good cop, bad cop, Amber playing rule cop, I'm playing strategy cop. So we're really looking forward to getting that show off the ground, and that should start next month. So we're going to try to get a couple episodes filmed ahead of time, and I got to get a couple edited myself because I actually have to start pulling my own weight as far as editing is concerned for this show, because Amber is really doing a fantastic job of keeping up with it, but she's keeping up with what we have, and adding more to that becomes my job. So we're gonna do our best to get my schedule organized for that as well. So as far as the vehicles are concerned, like I said, those 3 vehicles are going to be the ones that you, if anything, have any kind of chance in the current tactics meta. Now, when we get into no tactics format for the ROC, that's when you're going to see things really start to shift. When they stop playing with the tactics and the green battery is no longer a fear, white witch becomes your fear. That requires an investment of 87 points. So the question is our players going to be investing in 87 points just to shut down vehicles? And are vehicles going to be as relevant? And one of the things about a figure like the vehicles and a figure like the Nighthawk Prime is these are chases or high-end rarities. They're very difficult to find or get your hands on in comparison to, say, a rare or a super rare. And that means the market saturation doesn't exist as greatly. I know if I was to play locally, I know almost exactly the number of chases that exist in the area. And then depending on the people, I will know who's going to be playing what to a certain degree. And that's just the size of our player community, which is growing. And I do appreciate a lot of stores in the area that have been doing that. We had a store in Whitby called Comic Book Addiction that actually ran a new guy night, something WizKids used to do in the past. And I would like to see them do in the future, maybe bring back the idea of incentivizing bringing new people into the game. That was a really good idea, and I wouldn't mind doing it again. So as I go on tangents when I'm left on my own, vehicles in the tactics format have a hard time. When no tactics comes around, yeah, you'll probably be seeing more of them, and because there's less strategies in the tactics format that can stop them. That said, I have been testing. I've actually physically had a chance to test out this Agent Loki con exclusive figure. Oh man, do I have a new favorite. Amber's not happy that he's a new favorite because unfortunately Amber's my first test gerbil when it comes to testing. And then the Metal Lab guys, they're my second realm. That's where, like, if I can't get by Amber, I know the team can't work. And it's not something against Amber. Amber's beautiful and I love her and she's really good at the game. But it's how she beats me if she can beat me, right? She'll recognize and I'll recognize strategically I'm slightly better player than her. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. I want to make sure I'm not hurting her feelings while I'm over here. And if she absolutely curb stomps the team that I'm playing and I can't recognize a single mistake I made, I will scrap the team. It will never see the Metal App. I'll rip the page out of my notebook that I was writing it in or scratch it out, or I will throw it out, and that team doesn't make it. My teams go through several levels of testing, to be honest. And I'll try wildcard testing where I don't actually test against the Metal Lab guys, and I test against guys at my local store who want to try their teams, and I'll be like, hey, here's something you're going to see because I'm playing it. We might be getting Tom back. I'm going to try inviting Tom back into the call. Invite. And so that's the first level testing. And first level testing for a team that I have, it went through and it did admirably. But the team Amber was playing also needed some work itself. We noticed a big flaw in it, and part of it was the fact that we were using the Winter Soldier, Captain America, Winter Soldier, and it doesn't fare well at all. And that figure relies deeply on ignorance of your opponent, and that is, by ignorance of your opponent, I mean your opponent has to not know what it does and understand in any way, shape, or form, or not be able to read when the game starts and know immediately how to deal with it. And you can actually leave that figure stranded in the middle of the board with nothing to do. So if you find yourself wanting to use that figure, there's alternatives to him, to be brutally honest. Sorry guys, I'm kind of multitasking here, trying to get Tom into the show, back into the show, and getting this back in order. So we went and did fan questions nice and early, and I think I noticed there's another one waiting for us, and I went and vamped a little too long on that on a subject. So give me a second to find that next question. This way. All right. Since you guys like statistics, I broke down the Hank Pym dials real fast. This is Obi-Wan Chris again. Break down the Hank Pym dials real fast from a pure support power point of view. At each character's 50-point line on clicks 1 and 2, blue clicks 4 or 5, you have the option of getting Empower, Double Outwit, Sidestep TK, Barrier Outwit, Phasing for a good double morph options, Sidestep Leadership Carry. Okay, so a series of powers. Oh, geez. Might be because I ejected you. Give me a sec. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. I got to check settings here because I went and messed up and booted Tom out of the call, and I've got to find a way to get him back in. Amber, you want to Google something for me? Oh, wow, this is embarrassing. Jeez. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, for this. I'm attempting to be as patient as I can with this, and I wasn't so I'm going to refresh again, see if there's any more comments. No comments there. Sorry, carrying on with Obi-Wan. It's possible I missed something, but when no Texas rolls around, who needs Ant Storms when you can have this many support options for 50 points? And the two super rares have the Avengers TA, so it's good to start off with one of those guys to save on actions. That's all for today, I promise. Thanks again, guys. Thank you for your input there, Obi-Wan. And then, believe me, when it comes to team building, these are the things we are looking at. In fact, I actually brought up a topic with Tom where if you combine the Age of Ultron and the Fast Forces, because of the just gigantic number of Hank Pyms, we actually have more scientists than robots. And it's a topic I'm going to discuss in the future because there's potential in that. Invite link is the only option, and that it says that works. Did you click the link? All right, folks, we might actually have to stop this leg of the show and then start a new one. So just give me a second to find out if this happens. If we do that, keep your eyes on facebook.com/marriedwithclicks to get the new link. Or if you're following us on Google+, they should actually throw up an update in order to manage that. Because unfortunately, some technical issues has caused some problems with Tom on that. So if you give us a couple seconds, I'm actually going to shut down this stream now. I'm going to rename this to episode 44A. I'm going to start up episode 44B very shortly in order to get you guys back in it, and I will share the link with it immediately. So, guys, thank you very much for being patient with us. We're going to stop this stream, and we're going to move on to the next one and carry on from there. Thank you very much, guys. And keep the questions coming. If you have more questions, comments, throw them in the comments in that one or throw them on the comments on Facebook. So again, facebook.com/marriedwithclicks or watch Google Plus if you're there to check for the update when we actually share the link to the new episode. Thanks, guys.